why can't we use an ancient Indian materiality which actually alkalizes your food?
We actually, in our office, poured our first epoxy floor there, and we had a ghastly experience. It was nothing short of a nightmare. And if I had done that for a client, I would have definitely lost that job.
The specificity of our country is staggering, and the black and the gold and the copper stands out on black in a way that is resplendent.
You can put all the marble, all the gold leaf, everything luxurious in it that you want, but at the end of the day, people are still going to buy the apartment in Paris.
The individual perceives as luxury, as what he feels as his own space, or what he really wants or desires, and the experiential level of that. So while you're having fun, how difficult is it to convince your client to allow you to have fun, an experiment?
That is a great question. So I think I think for one, social media helps to show that we're kind of doing fun things, and some of them work and some of them don't. But actually, to be honest, to have a real conversation saying, this is something we're trying for the first time. The technology's been around. We actually, in our office, which is now 5 years old, poured our first epoxy floor there. And we had a ghastly experience. It was nothing short of a nightmare. And if I had done that for a client, I would have definitely lost that job. But coming from there, we are revamping some spaces within the studio itself. So tech has moved from that point forward. We have learned better. So I think it's just about that, about having honest conversations to say, hey, I want to try something new. Yes, we can go with the tried and tested, but this has a certain time and cost involved. And if you're willing to come on board, at least we'll together make something new and creative. So I think that's what we try and do.
Yeah. Shavana, your take on what your clients are telling you, and how tell us how you're having fun with your clients.
I think the Indian client 20 years ago, when I started design, was so different to the client today. I think the exposure, awareness, and clarity is much more. 15 years ago, I worked in London with Candy and Candy, and the one thing I learned from them was that they planned accessories before they laid the flooring. So they did the entire lighting grid, the flooring grid based on that sculpture coming there or that light coming there. And when I came back to India and I told my clients, they're like, we want to spend on marble, Amit. We want to spend on the best lighting, best furniture, but accessories baad mein dekhte hain. And at the end of the project, the client usually doesn't have a budget for accessories. So I think educating my client that, listen, eventually what your eye is going to sit on is going to be that piece or that accessory, and to understand the merit of it and budget it into the project in the beginning, I think was educating the client on luxury. And what is luxury? Where did the word luxury come from? It came from the Latin word luxuria, which means extravagance. And who always kind of decided what was luxurious? The elite, right? In China, the elite Chinese ate with ivory chopsticks. It eventually trickled down, and now it's a culture of people eating, with chopsticks. And Catherine Medici was this 16th century iconic, the person who set the tone and the mood. And she introduced silverware, which is eating with a fork. And she said that, eating with a fork, eating your pasta with a fork is civilized and trendy. And of course, at that time, everything Italian in the Renaissance period was so trendy. And, I think even the British authors, Clarence Rook, Andrew Rutters, they spoke about how eating with a fork and spoon was civilized, and eating with your hand was cannibalic and very uncivilized. And they even said that the British are kind of what was the word they used? And the supreme in international manners at the table. So forks and spoons became a thing of the elite, and they were all made in silver, which is why today we still call it silverware. And the British kind of indulged in beautiful tablescapes, individualized place settings. And so it became a thing of the bourgeoisie, that if you were on a table and everyone had similar place settings to you, you were considered a part of the elite. So what was really interesting is that when the British came to India, they tried very hard for us to eat with forks and spoons, but they couldn't. India was a different creature, and we didn't follow the norm. And the word chamcha, it comes from people who tried to please the British and eat with a spoon. But it's amazing that till today, only 1% of Indians eat with a fork. And I think we created our own story. And in fact, Stephen, you know, when you were speaking about the 5 elements, so our 5 fingers, they actually represent the 5 elements: fire, air, sky, earth, and water. And when you eat with your fingers, it kindles these elements and aids digestion. So I think that the Indian system of things was so scientific. And in fact, since 5,000 years, Kansa has been a material that we've eaten on since the Harappan age. And when I decided to design Kansa tableware, a lot of my team was like, ma'am, it's so not cool, it's so dated. And I was like, why can't we use an ancient Indian materiality which actually alkalizes your food, it purifies your blood, and make it trendy, make it luxurious. And that's, I think, when you think about what did Catherine Medici do, she made something really trendy, and she set the trend on silverware. And I think if all of us in this room, right, we're voices of luxury, if we brought back what our roots, what our ancients did, and made it luxurious, made it trendy, I think that would be a job well done. And they also talk about, you know, even the direction we sleep in. It's so important after we eat which direction we sleep in all our beds as well, right? Head to the south. Why? Because the Earth's magnetic fields are north to the south. And when you sleep north and south, they attract, and you get sound sleep. So the way we eat, the way we sleep, what we eat on, it's all kind of been so scientifically explained. And I think if we could bring our ancient heritage, which is actually even what Stephen has done in this beautiful space, and mix it with luxury, that would be amazing. Yeah.
Of course, Stevens and the Reliance Group has taken luxury to another level. This is different, and we're on a subject of a much smaller scale of residential. This is a massive scale, and this is extremely luxurious. And you know, events like this for FOAID, it actually is a beautiful space to, you know, elevate everyone's aspirations as well. So even people who are exhibiting here, I've seen over the years the quality improve drastically. You know, earlier we were at a different convention center, and the quality was okay, you know, because the infrastructure was that
Sound
way.
acoustics. I remember
The
we
sound
could never
acoustics,
hear each other.
everything, right? So even now you look at the exhibitors here, they've upped their quality. They're at par with any international exhibition that you see. So coming back to you, Husna, and back to your work, and I know that you've been doing a lot of experiential kind of work. What about materiality? How do you use materiality? Is there any way that you use Indian products, or do you still believe that luxury would come from an Armani sofa or a Fendi sofa? And I know the answer, but please.
I a few years ago walked into an arts and crafts emporium in Bangalore, which had Bidri representatives that were archaic, just little pill boxes and little plates. And I said, how would I contact the people who do this? Because it's the most beautiful engraving of silver in metal, which is then soaked into the soil beside the Bidar fort, which gives it the color black. And there is no other soil on the planet that can give it that color. The specificity of our country is staggering. And the black and the gold and the copper stands out on black in a way that is resplendent. So I got their number, and I thought it'd be a tedious task to travel to Bidar. But I made a phone call, and I said, Abdul Bhai, मैं Bangalore से phone कर रही हूँ. He took the next bus. He was on the next bus with his family, and that is the hunger that the craftsman in India has for work. He sat in my office and said, बताइए, हम 100 लोग हैं बिदर में, और हम ये साल 30 कम होने वाले हैं, अगले साल 10 कम होने वाले हैं और 5 साल में हम नहीं रहेंगे. That really touched a chord. I have a sequence of products designed around Bidar and Bidri. We won a couple of awards, El Decor and others, based on how that craft, which was just pillboxes in the Government Arts and Crafts Center, became an incredible basin for a powder room. It became hanging lights that just refracted light. It became intensely modern forms of chairs, but that beautiful Indian silver work, you know, in the interior of it. So Bidar was a very illuminating experience for me, because I believe that you need to push your barriers to align and to collaborate with people of consequence. So we've done that with stone as well. You know, we meet people and say, okay, I know you can inlay stone in stone. How about doing concrete in stone? How about doing metal in stone? How about, you know, just constantly the churn that, you know, Ekta, you spoke about, the laboratory, the testing, the trials, the prototypes. Just making sure that every day that you walk into that space, your creative laboratory, is a day that you feel more alive than the previous, because it's a day of newness. You're approaching something in a way that you didn't yesterday, and you're the better for it, and so is your entire team. And, you know, it's exciting when there's an element of surprise. We have a client in Bangalore right now, and I chuckle every time they sit beside me, because the man lives in a world of the Acropolis. He wants a home that looks like the Greek Acropolis. And that's the first photograph he showed me. He went, and I thought, I've been to Greece, so you want to live on the top of the hill, like the Greek gods, nice. And then the woman shows me a picture of an extremely monastic elevation. So I'm like excited, and I'm saying, how do you bring these two languages of the Greek Acropolis and a Japanese minimal aesthetic together? And you weave that fabric and that story in a way that you're the illusionist. And she believes she's getting a modern home, but he still believes he's getting the Acropolis, because they're two distinct beings. So therein lies this incredible journey for everyone, because every client we meet is a new being, and we react to them in a new avatar. So that experimentation and that ability to say, you know, this is not a problem. It in fact is going to keep me up at night in the most interesting way, with a smile on my face, you know. So I think that is the beauty of, that's, I suppose, why we call ourselves Fulcrum Studio. It's that balance between everything that conflicts and creates, you know, a sense of displacement or, an interesting departure from the ordinary. And we're trying to kind of say, okay, let's bring the man and the woman in the Acropolis and, tada wando in a way that still makes them realize that they have what they intentionally, set out to do.
Sure, and Laura, I'm going to shift from materiality to how do you balance when a client comes and tells you, I've got that much space and I want to be luxurious, and you say that's not required. I've come across that one. I'm referring to Ayodhya.
I guess, first of all, there's always a creative solution to everything. But I'm going to go to your point, or what you were saying. The fun in it is in the rebellion, right? The gatekeepers of what's trendy is being, it is the if you know situation. So space isn't everything. And it's the experiences that you can facilitate in those spaces, even in the in-between moments. Those in-between moments are incredibly important. And that's how I convince clients, is to gatekeep what's cool. Right? That's it. That's it. Otherwise people would be living in. Otherwise, people wouldn't be buying apartments in Paris. They would be living out in the country, or they'd be living in Portland, Oregon, right? Which one's more luxurious, the apartment in Paris? You can put all the marble, all the gold leaf, everything luxurious in it that you want, but at the end of the day, people are still going to buy the apartment in Paris, looking at the Eiffel Tower, because of the experience. Thank you.
Yep. So it's more about the experience than more about the space. But there is this whole different set of people that want that space and call space as luxury, right? So, and that whole segment exists truly in India, right? So there's the middle class, and there's the affluent, and there's the super rich, right? That want to, and has always been the case that, even if you go to history, like our kings and whatever had huge luxurious spaces. Okay, I'm going to take that back. Massive areas, right? It was just more to create that sense of power, or to symbolize power, and also to enjoy the space, right? And like triple height volumes, or large ceilings, or massive areas and stuff like that. So that still exists in our country. Yes, I agree, it's all about the experiential value as well. As designers, we need to do that, and we are doing it, and we're all doing it in our practices. But there's that huge sect of people that think and perceive space as being luxury, right? So, which is why we have so many people saying, "I want to build a home. That's big. That's big. Usse bhi bada chahiye." And I'm sure you guys, not so much you, but you must have come across that.
It also happens with hotels. I'll answer this in terms of
the space.
Yeah.
Yeah, go
I'll
for
give
it.
you a space challenge. So I do get this question a lot, and I'll give you an apple and egg scenario. At the end, the client, no matter how much luxury the client wants, like he or she has infinite space, infinite amount of resources to put into a project. At the end, it's like you said, it's still going to come down to a cost. And so it's about creating the maximum impact for the minimal cost. So a lot of times when we design hotels and you have people who are investing a significant amount of capital into a project and expecting a return on that investment, and the market research says, okay, you have this 5-star hotel, this one, and they're looking at a spreadsheet of the size of the room rate, whatever. What they're not getting is, what they're not studying is, what does it feel like to be in that space, and what is the value and the return on the investment? And I've been in hotel rooms that are maybe 1 to 4 in ratio deep, and the hotel room is 70 square meters, a standard room. And it looks like a cave. The bathroom is poorly planned. It's a massive open space, and there's no veranda. It's completely closed in. And what you can do with 45 square meters with a veranda outside that is a third of the size of the room, wouldn't you rather stay there? And the perceived value of that room has the veranda, and the cost of building it is way less. And so, yes, you can look at a spreadsheet and you can add on space and you can keep adding on into oblivion, but that doesn't mean that it's going to create any value. But if you compare apples to apples and put them right next to each other, and of course, we as architects and interior designers, words sort of mean nothing. We need to speak in terms, we're visually literate. We need to create graphics, we need to sketch, we need to convince someone through visuals, and rightfully so. Because if it all came down to spreadsheets, we wouldn't have a profession. And so luckily, we can be convincing, and we can design things with intention, and we can narrate what is the experience like and what is the value. And so you can find other examples to counteract those requests that are sometimes unfounded. And so that's how I usually do it, and even in a residence.
Great. So I was just going to say that for hospitality, yes, you would be looking at a spreadsheet, but for a personal home, that may not exactly translate into that because there's no ROI on a home, right? It's an ROI would obviously mean experience, right? And it's not a tangible kind of a situation where you say what's the experiential value in terms of real return on investment. So, Ekta, I'll go at you. And I think we're running out of time, so probably one of the last few questions. Let's say a client came to you and said, "Usse bhi bada humko chahiye," right? So what would you do if you were in Laura's shoes and says, "No, I won't do it, and I'll only do experiential spaces."
So I do think, I do agree with Laura to a large extent where it is about experience, right? Nobody wants to live in a cave which is 1,000 square meters as against something which is way smaller but better. And this has happened. I mean, the example that you gave of a client coming with a brief of a certain square foot area home and it expanding, because one is you're sitting on farmland or you're sitting on land and literally your FSI is not a concern. You are just going to keep expanding. But what are you doing with those expanded spaces? And I think that's very important to look at, because it's the line we draw on paper, and I don't mean physically, now it's all digital, but it's very important. It needs to mean something. And next to every space you create, what is that negative space which is bringing in the light, the ventilation, the sun path diagram, just creating, bringing nature, our coexistence with indoor outdoors. So while, yes, we would expand the space as a requirement, I think we would also try to bring in those natural elements, right? It's about creating courtyards, creating large, deep verandas for our kind of climate. Tropical living is not easy. It's great to have a house by the sea, but I remember ever since we started our own firm, I've stopped enjoying the first monsoon because I don't know which site is going to call me saying we're leaking, right? And it's about that. It's about if it's planned for before, if you have deep veranda spaces, 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet verandas, where if you are building a weekend home, then it's really not about being within that space. It's about living indoor, outdoors. And then just planning them such that you educate your client as to, yes, we can make your home from 10,000 square feet to 20,000 square feet, but the additional 10,000, which you don't technically need, because need is a very subjective thing again, can be more experience-based. And I think that's very important as creators to be able to do.
Shavanya, your take on that?
So I think that we did this 40,000 square foot house in Pune for a very eccentric Parsi couple. And I think the one thing I learned is whatever the size of home you do, that client will always need that one more room, just one more room, you know. And I think that in design, the main thing is, of course, meeting your client's need, but also educating them about functionality. And I think that people spend so much time that I want this and I want that and I want everything in my home, which is great. But integrating it into their lifestyle, like we spend 1/3 of our life sleeping, but how much time do we spend on that, choosing that mattress, those bed sheets, your actual living? You have dinner. Where do you actually interact with your family, have those jokes, you know, and those long conversations? But what is the tableware? So I think creating a home, but actually bringing that functionality and that experience to that client is something that brings me great joy.
Great. I think we've run out of time, and I think just to sum it up, we've spoken about materiality, we've spoken about being bespoke in terms of design, we've spoken about spatial quality, experience spatial qualities differently. I think this has been super and great to have you on board.